Christian Science, and the Book of Mrs. Eddy by Mark Twain. It is the first time since the dawn days of creation that a voice has gone crashing through space, with such placid and complacent confidence and command. This last summer, when I was on my way back to Vienna from the appetite cure in the mountains, I fell over a cliff in the twilight and broke some arms and legs and one thing or another, and by good luck was found by some peasants who had lost an ass, and they carried me to the nearest habitation, which was one of those large, low, thatch-roofed farmhouses, with apartments in the garret for the family, and a cunning little porch under the deep gable, decorated with boxes of bright-colored flowers and cats. On the ground floor, a large and light sitting room, separated from the milch cattle apartment by a partition, and in the front yard rose stately and fine the wealth and pride of the house, the manure pile. That sentence is Germanic, and shows that I am acquiring that sort of mastery of the art and spirit of the language which enables a man to travel all day in one sentence without changing cars. There was a village a mile away, and a horse doctor lived there, but there was no surgeon. It seemed a bad outlook. Mine was distinctly a surgery case. Then it was remembered that a lady from Boston was summering in that village, and she was a Christian Science doctor and could cure anything. So she was sent for. It was night by this time, and she could not conveniently come, but sent word that it was no matter, there was no hurry, she would give me absent treatment now, and come in the morning. Meantime she begged me to make myself tranquil and comfortable and remember that there was nothing the matter with me. I thought there must be some mistake. Did you tell her I walked off a cliff 75 feet high? Yes. And struck a boulder at the bottom and bounced? Yes. And struck another one and bounced again? Yes. And struck another one and bounced yet again? Yes. And broke the boulders? Yes. That accounts for it, she is thinking of the boulders. Why didn't you tell her I got hurt too? I did, I told her what you told me to tell her. That you were now but an incoherent series of compound fractures extending from your scalp lock to your heels, and that the comminuted projections caused you to look like a hat rack. And it was after this that she wished me to remember that there was nothing the matter with me. Those were her words. I do not understand it. I believe she has not diagnosed the case with sufficient care. Did she look like a person who was theorizing, or did she look like one who has fallen off precipices herself and brings to the aid of abstract science the confirmation of personal experience? Bit. It was too large a contract for the Stubenmadchen's vocabulary. She couldn't call the hand. I allowed the subject to rest there, and asked for something to eat and smoke, and something hot to drink, and a basket to pile my legs in, and another capable person to come and help me curse the time away. But I could not have any of these things. Why? She said you would need nothing at all. But I am hungry and thirsty, and in desperate pain. She said you would have these delusions, but must pay no attention to them. She wants you to particularly remember that there are no such things as hunger and thirst and pain. She does she? It is what she said. Does she seem to be in full and functional possession of her intellectual plant, such as it is? Bit. Do they let her run at large, or do they tie her up? Tie her up. There, good night, run along. You are a good girl, but your mental jesker is not arranged for light and airy conversation. Leave me to my delusions. It was a night of anguish, of course. At least I supposed it was, for it had all the symptoms of it, but it passed at last, and the Christian Scientist came, and I was glad. She was middle-aged and large and bony and erect, and had an austere face and a resolute jaw and a Roman beak, and was a widow in the third degree, and her name was Fuller. I was eager to get to business and find relief, but she was distressingly deliberate. She unpinned and unhooked and uncoupled her upholsteries one by one, abolished the wrinkles with a flirt of her hand and hung the articles up, peeled off her gloves and disposed of them, got a book out of her handbag, then drew a chair to the bedside, descended into it without hurry, and I hung out my tongue. She said, with pity but without passion, "Return it to its receptacle. We deal with the mind only, not with its dumb servants." I could not offer my pulse because the connection was broken, but she detected the apology before I could word it, and indicated by a negative tilt of her head that the pulse was another dumb servant that she had no use for. Then I thought I would tell her my symptoms and how I felt, so that she would understand the case. But that was another inconsequence. She did not need to know those things. Moreover, my remark about how I felt was an abuse of language, a misapplication of terms. One does not feel, she explained. There is no such thing as feeling. Therefore, to speak of a non-existent thing as existent is a contradiction. Matter has no existence. Nothing exists but mind. The mind cannot feel pain, it can only imagine it. But if it hurts just the same, it doesn't. A thing which is unreal cannot exercise the functions of reality. Pain is unreal, hence pain cannot hurt. In making a sweeping gesture to indicate the act of shooing the illusion of pain out of the mind, she raked her hand on a pin in her dress, said ouch, and went tranquilly on with her talk. You should never allow yourself to speak of how you feel, nor permit others to ask you how you are feeling. You should never concede that you are ill, nor permit others to talk about disease or pain or death or similar non-existences in your preserve. Such talk only encourages the mind to continue its empty imaginings. Just at that point the Stubenmadchen trod on the cat's tail, and the cat let fly a frenzy of cat profanity. I asked with caution, is a cat's opinion about pain valuable? A cat has no opinion. Opinions proceed from the mind only. The lower animals, being eternally perishable, have not been granted mind. Without mind, opinion is impossible. She merely imagined she felt a pain, the cat. She cannot imagine a pain, for imagination is an effect of mind. Without mind, there is no imagination. A cat has no imagination. Then she had a real pain. I have already told you there is no such thing as real pain. It is strange and interesting. I do wonder what was the matter with the cat. Because, there being no such thing as real pain, and she not being able to imagine an imaginary thing, it would seem that God in his pity has compensated the cat with some kind of a mysterious emotion, usable when her tail is trodden on, which for the moment joins cat and Christian in one common brotherhood of. She broke in with an irritated peace. The cat feels nothing, the Christian feels nothing. Your empty and foolish imaginings are profanation and blasphemy, and can do you an injury. It is wiser and better and holier to recognize and confess that there is no such thing as disease or pain or death. I am full of imaginary tortures, I said, but I do not think I could be any more uncomfortable if they were real ones. What must I do to get rid of them? There is no occasion to get rid of them, since they do not exist. They are illusions propagated by matter, and matter has no existence. There is no such thing as matter. It sounds right and clear, but yet it seems in a degree elusive. It seems to slip through, just when you think you are getting a grip on it. Explain. Well, for instance, if there is no such thing as matter, how can matter propagate things? In her compassion she almost smiled. She would have smiled if there were any such thing as a smile. It is quite simple, she said. The fundamental propositions of Christian Science explain it, and they are summarized in the four following self-evident propositions. One God is all and a God is good. Good is min God, spirit being all, nothing is matter. For life, God, omnipotent good, deny death, evil, sin, disease. There now you see. It seemed nebulous. It did not seem to say anything about the difficulty in hand, how non-existent matter can propagate illusions. I said, with some hesitancy. Does it explain? Doesn't it? Even if read backward it will do it. With a budding hope, I asked her to do it backward. Very well. Disease, sin, evil, death, deny good, omnipotent God, life, matter. Is nothing, all being, spirit, God, mind. Is good, good, is God, all in all is God. There, do you understand now? Well, it is plainer than it was before still. Well, could you try it some more ways? As many as you like, it always means the same. Interchanged in any way you please, it cannot be made to mean anything different from what it means when put in any other way, because it is perfect. You can jumble it all up, and it makes no difference. It always comes out the way it was before. It was a marvelous mind that produced it. As a mental tour de force it is without a mate, it defies alike the simple, the concrete, and the occult. It seems to be a corker. I blushed for the word, but it was out before I could stop it. What? A wonderful structure, combination, so to speak, or profound thoughts, unthinkable ones, It is true, read backwards or forwards or perpendicularly, or at any given angle. These four propositions will always be found to agree in statement and proof. Ah, proof, now we are coming at it. The statements agree, they agree with any way they agree. I noticed that. But what is it they prove? I mean, in particular. Why, nothing could be clearer. They prove 1. God principle, life, truth, love, soul, spirit, mind. Do you get that? I seem to. Go on, please. 2. Man, God's universal idea, individual, perfect, eternal. Is it clear? I think so. Continue. 3. Idea, an image in mind, the immediate object of understanding. There it is, the whole sublime arcana of Christian science in a nutshell. Do you find a weak place in it anywhere? Well, no, it seems strong. Very well, there is more. Those 3 constitute the scientific definition of immortal mind. Next, we have the scientific definition of mortal mind. Thus, first degree, depravity. 1. Physical passions and appetites, fear, depraved will, pride, envy, deceit, hatred, revenge, sin, disease, death. Phantasms, madam, unrealities as I understand it. Every 1. Second degree, evil disappearing. 1. Moral honesty, affection, compassion, hope, faith, meekness, temperance. Is it clear? Crystal. Third degree, spiritual salvation. 1. Spiritual, faith, wisdom, power, purity, understanding, health, love. You see how searchingly and coordinately interdependent and anthropomorphous it all is. In this third degree, as we know by the revelations of Christian science, mortal mind disappears. It's not earlier. No, not until the teaching and preparation for the third degree are completed. It is not until then that one is enabled to take hold of Christian science effectively, and with the right sense of sympathy and kinship, as I understand you. That is to say, it could not succeed during the process of the second degree, because there would still be remains of mind left, and therefore, but I interrupted you. You were about to further explain the good results proceeding from the erosions and disintegrations affected by the third degree. It is very interesting. Go on, please. Yes, as I was saying, in this third degree mortal mind disappears. Science so reverses the evidence before the corporeal human senses as to make this scriptural testimony true in our hearts. The last shall be first, and the first shall be last. That God and his idea may be to us what divinity really is, and must of necessity be all-inclusive. It is beautiful, and with that exhaustive exactness, your choice and arrangement of words confirms and establishes what you have claimed for the powers and functions of the third degree. The second could probably produce only temporary absence of mind. It is reserved to the third to make it permanent. A sentence framed under the auspices of the second could have a kind of meaning, a sort of deceptive semblance of it, whereas it is only under the magic of the third that that defect would disappear. Also, without doubt, it is the third degree that contributes another remarkable specialty to Christian science, viz., ease and flow and lavishness of words, and rhythm and swing and smoothness. There must be a special reason for this. Yes, God all God, good, non-matter, matteration, spirit, bones, truth. That explains it. There is nothing in Christian science that is not explicable. For God is one, time is one, individuality is one, and may be one of a series, one of many, as an individual man, individual horse. Whereas God is one, not one of a series, but one alone and without an equal. These are noble thoughts. They make one burn to know more. How does Christian science explain the spiritual relation of systematic duality to incidental reflection? Christian science reverses the seeming relation of soul and body, as astronomy reverses the human perception of the movement of the solar system, and makes body tributary to mind, as it is the earth which is in motion, while the sun is at rest. Though in viewing the sun rise one finds it impossible to believe the sun not to be really rising, so the body is but the humble servant of the restful mind, though it seems otherwise to finite sense. But we shall never understand this while we admit that soul is in body or mind in matter, and that man is included in non-intelligence. Soul is God, unchangeable and eternal, and man coexists with and reflects soul, for the all in all is the altogether, and the altogether embraces the all one, soul, mind, soul, love, spirit, bones, liver, one of a series, alone and without an equal. It is very curious, the effect which Christian science has upon the verbal bowels, particularly the third degree. It makes one think of a dictionary with the cholera. But I only thought this, I did not say it. What is the origin of Christian science? Is it a gift of God, or did it just happen? In a sense, it is a gift of God. That is to say, its powers are from Him, but the credit of the discovery of the powers and what they are for is due to an American lady. Indeed, when did this occur? In 1866. That is the immortal date when pain and disease and death disappeared from the earth to return no more forever. That is, the fancies for which those terms stand disappeared. The things themselves had never existed. Therefore, as soon as it was perceived that there were no such things, they were easily banished. The history and nature of the great discovery are set down in the book here, and did the lady write the book? Yes, she wrote it all herself. The title is Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, for she explains the Scriptures, they were not understood before, not even by the 12 disciples. She begins thus, I will read it to you. But she had forgotten to bring her glasses. Well, it is no matter, she said. I remember the words, indeed, all Christian scientists know the book by heart. It is necessary in our practice. We should otherwise make mistakes and do harm. She begins thus, in the year 1866 I discovered the science of metaphysical healing, and named it Christian Science. And she says, quite beautifully, I think, through Christian Science, religion and medicine are inspired with a diviner nature and essence, fresh pinions are given to faith and understanding, and thoughts acquaint themselves intelligently with God. Her very words. It is elegant, and it is a fine thought, too, marrying religion to medicine, instead of medicine to the undertaker in the old way. For religion and medicine properly belong together, they being the basis of all spiritual and physical health. What kind of medicine do you give for the ordinary diseases, such as? We never give medicine in any circumstances whatever, we. But, madam, it says. I don't care what it says, and I don't wish to talk about it. I am sorry if I have offended, but you see the mention seemed in some way inconsistent, and there are no inconsistencies in Christian Science. The thing is impossible, for the science is absolute. It cannot be otherwise, since it proceeds directly from the all in all and the everything in which, also soul, bones, truth, one of a series, alone and without equal. It is mathematics purified from material dross and made spiritual. I can see that, but it rests upon the immovable basis of an apodictical principle. The word flattened itself against my mind trying to get in, and disordered me a little, and before I could inquire into its pertinency, she was already throwing the needed light. This apodictical principle is the absolute principle of scientific mind healing, the sovereign omnipotence which delivers the children of men from pain, disease, decay, and every ill that flesh is heir to. Surely not every ill, every decay. Every one, there are no exceptions. There is no such thing as decay, it is an unreality, it has no existence. But without your glasses, your failing eyesight does not permit you to. My eyesight cannot fail, nothing can fail, the mind is master and the mind permits no retrogression. She was under the inspiration of the third degree, therefore there could be no profit in continuing this part of the subject. I shifted to other ground and inquired further concerning the discoverer of the science. Did the discovery come suddenly, like Klondike, or after long study and calculation, like America? The comparisons are not respectful, since they refer to trivialities, but let it pass. I will answer in the discoverer's own words. God had been graciously fitting me, during many years, for the reception of a final revelation of the absolute principle of scientific mind healing. Many years, how many? 18 centuries. All God, God good, good God, truth, bones, liver, one of a series alone and without equal, it is amazing. You may well say it, sir, yet it is but the truth. This American lady, our revered and sacred founder, is distinctly referred to, and her coming prophesied, in the 12th chapter of the Apocalypse. She could not have been more plainly indicated by St. John without actually mentioning her name. How strange, how wonderful. I will quote her own words for her Key to the Scriptures. The 12th chapter of the Apocalypse has a special suggestiveness in connection with this 19th century. There, do you note that? Note it well. But what does it mean? Listen, and you will know. I quote her inspired words again. In the opening of the sixth seal, typical of 6,000 years since Adam, there is one distinctive feature which has special reference to the present age. Thus, revelation, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. That is our head, our chief, our discoverer of Christian science. Nothing can be plainer, nothing surer. And note this. Revelation, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of God. That is Boston. I recognize it, madam. These are sublime things and impressive. I never understood these passages before. Please go on with the proofs. Very well, listen. And I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was upon his head, and his face was as it were the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire. And he had in his hand a little book. A little book, merely a little book, could words be modester? Yet how stupendous its importance. Do you know what book that was? Was it? I hold it in my hand, Christian Science. Love, livers, lights, bones, truth, kidneys, one of a series, alone and without equal. It is beyond imagination and wonder. Hear our founder's eloquent words. Then will a voice from harmony cry, Go and take the little book, take it and eat it up, and it shall make thy belly bitter, but it shall be in thy mouth sweet as honey. Mortal, obey the heavenly evangel, take up divine science, read it from beginning to end, study it, ponder it. It will be indeed sweet at its first taste when it heals you, but murmur not over truth if you find its digestion bitter. You now know the history of our dear and holy science, sir, and that its origin is not of this earth, but only its discovery. I will leave the book with you and will go now, but give yourself no uneasiness. I will give you absent treatment from now till I go to bed. Under the powerful influence of the near treatment and the absent treatment together, my bones were gradually retreating inward and disappearing from view. The good word took a brisk start, now, and went on quite swiftly. My body was diligently straining and stretching, this way and that, to accommodate the processes of restoration, and every minute or two I heard a dull click inside and knew that the two ends of a fracture had been successfully joined. This muffled clicking and gritting and grinding and rasping continued during the next 3 hours and then stopped. The connections had all been made. All except dislocations, there were only 7 of these. Hips, shoulders, knees, neck. So that was soon over. One after another they slipped into their sockets with a sound like pulling a distant cork, and I jumped up as good as new as to framework and sent for the horse doctor. I was obliged to do this because I had a stomachache and a cold in the head, and I was not willing to trust these things any longer in the hands of a woman whom I did not know, and in whose ability to successfully treat mere disease I had lost all confidence. My position was justified by the fact that the cold and the ache had been in her charge from the first, along with the fractures, but had experienced not a shade of relief. And indeed the ache was even growing worse and more bitter now, probably on account of the protracted abstention from food and drink. The horse doctor came, a pleasant man and full of hope and professional interest in the case. In the matter of smell, he was pretty aromatic, in fact quite horsey, and I tried to arrange with him for absent treatment, but it was not in his line, so out of delicacy I did not press it. He looked at my teeth and examined my hock, and said my age and general condition were favorable to energetic measures. Therefore he would give me something to turn the stomachache into the bots, and the cold in the head into the blind staggers. Then he should be on his own beat and would know what to do. He made up a bucket of bran mash, and set a dipperful of it every 2 hours, alternated with a drench with turpentine and axle grease in it, would either knock my ailments out of me in 24 hours or so interest me in other ways as to make me forget they were on the premises. He administered my first dose himself, then took his leave, saying I was free to eat and drink anything I pleased and in any quantity I liked. But I was not hungry any more and did not care for food. I took up the Christian Scientist book and read half of it, then took a dipperful of drench and read the other half. The resulting experiences were full of interest and adventure, all through the rumblings and grindings and quakings and effervescings, accompanying the evolution of the ache into the bots, and the cold into the blind staggers. I could note the generous struggle for mastery, going on between the mash and the drench and the literature, and often I could tell which was ahead, and could easily distinguish the literature from the others when the others were separate, though not when they were mixed. For when a bran mash and an eclectic drench are mixed together, they look just like the apodictical principle out on a lark, and no one can tell it from that. The finish was reached at last, the evolutions were complete and a fine success, but I think that this result could have been achieved with fewer materials. I believe the mash was necessary to the conversion of the stomachache into the bots, but I think one could develop the blind staggers out of the literature by itself. Also, that blind staggers produced in this way would be of a better quality, and more lasting than any produced by the artificial processes of a horse doctor. For of all the strange, and frantic, and incomprehensible, and uninterpretable books which the imagination of man has created, surely this one is the prize sample. It is written with a limitless confidence and complacency, and with a dash and stir and earnestness which often compel the effects of eloquence, even when the words do not seem to have any traceable meaning. There are plenty of people who imagine they understand the book. I know this, for I have talked with them. But in all cases, they were people who also imagined that there were no such things as pain, sickness, and death, and no realities in the world, nothing actually existent but mind. It seems to me to modify the value of their testimony. When these people talk about Christian Science, they do as Mrs. Fuller did. They do not use their own language, but the book S. They pour out the book's showy incoherences and leave you to find out later that they were not originating, but merely quoting. They seem to know the volume by heart and to revere it as they would a Bible. Another Bible, perhaps I ought to say. Plainly, the book was written under the mental desolations of the third degree, and I feel sure that none but the membership of that degree can discover meanings in it. When you read it, you seem to be listening to a lively and aggressive and oracular speech delivered in an unknown tongue, a speech whose spirit you get but not the particulars. Or, to change the figure, you seem to be listening to a vigorous instrument which is making a noise it thinks is a tune, but which to persons not members of the band is only the martial tooting of a trombone, and merely stirs the soul through the noise but does not convey a meaning. The book's serenities of self-satisfaction do almost seem to smack of a heavenly origin. They have no bloodkin in the earth. It is more than human to be so placidly certain about things, and so finely superior, and so airily content with one's performance, without ever presenting anything which may rightfully be called by the strong name of evidence, and sometimes without even mentioning a reason for a deduction at all. It thunders out the startling words, I have proved so and so. It takes the Pope and all the great guns of his church and battery, assembled to authoritatively settle and establish the meaning of a sole and single unclarified passage of Scripture, and this at vast cost of time and study and reflection, but the author of this work is superior to all that. She finds the whole Bible in an unclarified condition, and at small expense of time and no expense of mental effort she clarifies it from lid to lid, reorganizes and improves the meanings, then authoritatively settles and establishes them with formulae which you cannot tell from, let there be light. And here you have it. It is the first time since the dawn days of creation that a voice has gone crashing through space with such placid and complacent confidence and command. A word upon a question of authorship. Not that quite, but rather a question of emendation and revision. We know that the Bible Annex was not written by Mrs. Eddy, but was handed down to her 1800 years ago by the angel of the apocalypse. But did she translate it alone, or did she have help? There seems to be evidence that she had help, for there are four several copyrights on it: 1875, 1885, 1890, 1894. It did not come down in English, for in that language it could not have acquired copyright. There were no copyright laws 18 centuries ago, and in my opinion no English language, at least up there. This makes it substantially certain that the annex is a translation. Then, was not the first translation complete? If it was, on what grounds were the later copyrights granted? I surmise that the first translation was poor, and that a friend or friends of Mrs. Eddy mended its English 3 times, and finally got it into its present shape, where the grammar is plenty good enough, and the sentences are smooth and plausible though they do not mean anything. I think I am right in this surmise, for Mrs. Eddy cannot write English today, and this is argument that she never could. I am not able to guess who did the mending, but I think it was not done by any member of the Eddy Trust, nor by the editors of the Christian Science Journal, for their English is not much better than Mrs. Eddy's. However, as to the main point, it is certain that Mrs. Eddy did not doctor the annex's English herself. Her original, spontaneous, undoctored English furnishes ample proof of this. Here are samples from recent articles from her unappeasable pen. Double-columned with them are a couple of passages from the annex. It will be seen that they throw light. The italics are mine. Electric streetcars run, man is never sick. For sick, merrily through several mind is not sick, and matter streets, concrete sidewalks cannot be. A false belief in macadamized roads dotted is both the tempter and the sick the place, etc. Tempted, the sin and the ibid. Sinner, the disease and its three. Shorn, sick of its cause. It is well to be calm suburbs, it had indeed little in sickness. To be hopeful is left to admire, save to sick still better. but to such as fancy a skeleton understand that sickness is not above ground breathing, sick, real, and that truth can slowly through a barren, sick, destroy it, is best of all for breast. Ibid. It is the universal and perfect remedy. Chapter Roman 12, Annex. You notice the contrast between the smooth, plausible, elegant, addled English of the doctored annex and the lumbering, ragged, ignorant output of the translator's natural, spontaneous, and unmedicated penwork. The English of the annex has been slicked up by a very industrious and painstaking hand, but it was not Mrs. Eddy's. If Mrs. Eddy really wrote or translated the annex, her original draft was exactly in harmony with the English of her plague spot or bacilli, which were gnawing at the insides of the metropolis, and bringing its heart on bended knee, thus exposing to the eye the rest of the skeleton breathing slowly through a barren breast. And it bore little or no resemblance to the book as we have it now that the salaried polisher has wholly stoned all of the genuine edities out of it. Will the plague spot article go into a volume just as it stands? I think not. I think the polisher will take off his coat and vest and cravat and demonstrate over it a couple of weeks and sweat it into a shape something like the following. And then Mrs. Eddy will publish it and leave people to believe that she did the polishing herself. It was a social club which propagated an interest in idle amusements, disseminated a knowledge of games, etc. The annex contains one sole and solitary humorous remark. There is a most elaborate and voluminous index, and it is preceded by this note. This index will enable the student to find any thought or idea contained in the book. No one doubts, certainly not I, that the mind exercises a powerful influence over the body. From the beginning of time, the sorcerer, the interpreter of dreams, the fortune teller, the charlatan, the quack, the wild medicine man, the educated physician, the mesmerist, and the hypnotist have made use of the client's imagination to help them in their work. They have all recognized the potency and availability of that force. Physicians cure many patients with a bread pill. They know that where the disease is only a fancy, the patient's confidence in the doctor will make the bread pill effective. Faith in the doctor. Perhaps that is the entire thing. It seems to look like it. In old times, the king cured the king's evil by the touch of the royal hand. He frequently made extraordinary cures. Could his footman have done it? No, not in his own clothes. Disguised as the king, could he have done it? I think we may not doubt it. I think we may feel sure that it was not the king's touch that made the cure in any instance, but the patient's faith in the efficacy of a king's touch. Genuine and remarkable cures have been achieved through contact with the relics of a saint. Is it not likely that any other bones would have done as well if the substitution had been concealed from the patient? When I was a boy, a farmer's wife who lived 5 miles from our village had great fame as a faith doctor. That was what she called herself. Sufferers came to her from all around, and she laid her hand upon them and said, "Have faith, it is all that is necessary," and they went away well of their ailments. She was not a religious woman, and pretended to no occult powers. She said that the patient's faith in her did the work. Several times I saw her make immediate cures of severe toothaches. My mother was the patient. In Austria, there is a peasant who drives a great trade in this sort of industry and has both the high and the low for patients. He gets into prison every now and then for practicing without a diploma, but his business is as brisk as ever when he gets out, for his work is unquestionably successful and keeps his reputation high. In Bavaria, there is a man who performed so many great cures that he had to retire from his profession of stage carpentering in order to meet the demand of his constantly increasing body of customers. He goes on from year to year doing his miracles and has become very rich. He pretends to no religious helps, no supernatural aids, but thinks there is something in his makeup which inspires the confidence of his patients, and that it is this confidence which does the work and not some mysterious power issuing from himself. Within the last quarter of a century, in America, several sects of cures have appeared under various names and have done notable things in the way of healing ailments without the use of medicines. There are the mind cure, the faith cure, the prayer cure, the mental science cure, and the Christian science cure, and apparently they all do their miracles with the same old powerful instrument, the patient's imagination. Differing names, but no difference in the process. But they do not give that instrument the credit. Each sect claims that its way differs from the ways of the others. They all achieve some cures, there is no question about it. And the faith cure and the prayer cure probably do no harm when they do no good, since they do not forbid the patient to help out the cure with medicines if he wants to. But the others bar medicines and claim ability to cure every conceivable human ailment through the application of their mental forces alone. They claim ability to cure malignant cancer and other affections which have never been cured in the history of the race. There would seem to be an element of danger here. It has the look of claiming too much, I think. Public confidence would probably be increased if less were claimed. I believe it might be shown that all the mind sects except Christian Science have lucid intervals, intervals in which they betray some diffidence, and in effect confess that they are not the equals of the deity. But if the Christian Scientist even stops with being merely the equal of the deity, it is not clearly provable by his Christian Science amended Bible. In the usual Bible, the deity recognizes pain, disease, and death as facts, but the Christian Scientist knows better, and is not diffident about saying so. The Christian Scientist was not able to cure my stomachache and my cold, but the horse doctor did it. This convinces me that Christian Science claims too much. In my opinion, it ought to let diseases alone and confine itself to surgery. There it would have everything its own way. The horse doctor charged me 30 kreutzers, and I paid him. In fact, I doubled it and gave him a shilling. Mrs. Fuller brought in an itemized bill for a crate of broken bones, mended in 234 places, $1 per fracture. Nothing exists but mind. Nothing, she answered. All else is substanceless, all else is imaginary. I gave her an imaginary check, and now she is suing me for substantial dollars. It looks inconsistent. Let us consider that we are all partially insane. It will explain us to each other. It will unriddle many riddles. It will make clear and simple many things which are involved in haunting and harassing difficulties and obscurities now. Those of us who are not in the asylum, and not demonstrably do there, are nevertheless no doubt insane in one or two particulars. I think we must admit this. But I think that we are otherwise healthy-minded. I think that when we all see one thing alike, it is evidence that as regards that one thing, our minds are perfectly sound. Now there are really several things which we do all see alike, things which we all accept, and about which we do not dispute. For instance, we who are outside of the asylum all agree that water seeks its level, that the sun gives light and heat, that fire consumes, that fog is damp, that 6 times 6 are 36, that 2 fro leave 8, that 8 and are 15. These are perhaps the only things we are agreed about. But although they are so few, they are of inestimable value because they make an infallible standard of sanity. Whosoever accepts them we know to be substantially sane, sufficiently sane, in the working essentials, sane. Whoever disputes a single one of them we know to be wholly insane and qualified for the asylum. Very well, the man who disputes none of them we concede to be entitled to go at large. But that is concession enough. We cannot go any further than that. For we know that in all matters of mere opinion that same man is insane, just as insane as we are, just as insane as Shakespeare was, just as insane as the Pope is. We know exactly where to put our finger upon his insanity. It is where his opinion differs from ours. That is a simple rule and easy to remember. When I, a thoughtful and unbiased Presbyterian, examine the Quran, I know that beyond any question every Mohammedan is insane, not in all things but in religious matters. When a thoughtful and unbiased Mohammedan examines the Westminster Catechism, he knows that beyond any question I am spiritually insane. I cannot prove to him that he is insane, because you never can prove anything to a lunatic, for that is a part of his insanity and the evidence of it. He cannot prove to me that I am insane, for my mind has the same defect that afflicts his. All Democrats are insane, but not one of them knows it. None but the Republicans and mugwumps know it. All the Republicans are insane, but only the Democrats and mugwumps can perceive it. The rule is perfect. In all matters of opinion, our adversaries are insane. When I look around me, I am often troubled to see how many people are mad. To mention only a few. The atheist, the Shakers, the infidel, the Millerites, the agnostic, the Mormons, the Baptist, the Lawrence Oliphant, the Methodist, Harrisites, the Catholic, and the other the Grand Lama's people. 115 Christian sects, the monarchists, Presbyterian excepted, the imperialists, the 72 Mohammedan sects, the Democrats, the Buddhists, the Republicans, but not the Blavatsky Buddhist, the Mugwumps, the nationalist, the mind curists, the Confucian, the faith curists, the spiritualists, the mental scientists, the 2000 East Indian, the allopaths, sects, the homeopaths, the peculiar people, the electropaths, the Swedenborgians. But there's no end to the list, there are millions of them, and all insane, each in his own way, insane as to his pet fad or opinion, but otherwise sane and rational. This should move us to be charitable toward one another's lunacies. I recognize that in his special belief the Christian Scientist is insane, because he does not believe as I do, but I hail him as my mate and fellow because I am as insane as he, insane from his point of view, and his point of view is as authoritative as mine and worth as much. That is to say, worth a brass farthing. Upon a great religious or political question, the opinion of the dullest head in the world is worth the same as the opinion of the brightest head in the world. A brass farthing. How do we arrive at this? It is simple. The affirmative opinion of a stupid man is neutralized by the negative opinion of his stupid neighbor. No decision is reached. The affirmative opinion of the intellectual giant Gladstone is neutralized by the negative opinion of the intellectual giant Cardinal Newman. No decision is reached. Opinions that prove nothing are, of course, without value. Any but a dead person knows that much. This obliges us to admit the truth of the unpalatable proposition just mentioned above, that in disputed matters, political and religious, one man's opinion is worth no more than his peer, s, and hence it follows that no man's opinion possesses any real value. It is a humbling thought, but there is no way to get around it. All opinions upon these great subjects are brass farthing opinions. It is a mere plain simple fact, as clear and as certain as that 8 and make 15. And by it we recognize that we are all insane as concerns those matters. If we were sane we should all see a political or religious doctrine alike, there would be no dispute. It would be a case of 8 and, just as it is in heaven where all are sane and none insane. There is but one religion, one belief, the harmony is perfect, there is never a discordant note. Under protection of these preliminaries, I suppose I may now repeat without offense that the Christian Scientist is insane. I mean him no discourtesy, and I am not charging, nor even imagining, that he is insaner than the rest of the human race. I think he is more picturesquely insane than some of us. At the same time, I am quite sure that in one important and splendid particular, he is saner than is the vast bulk of the race. Why is he insane? I told you before, it is because his opinions are not ours. I know of no other reason, and I do not need any other. It is the only way we have of discovering insanity when it is not violent. It is merely the picturesqueness of his insanity that makes it more interesting than my kind or yours. For instance, consider his little book, the one described in the previous article. The little book, exposed in the sky 18 centuries ago by the flaming angel of the apocalypse, and handed down in our day to Mrs. Mary Baker G. Eddy of New Hampshire and translated by her, word for word, into English with help of a polisher, and now published and distributed in hundreds of editions by her at a clear profit per volume, above cost, of 700%. A profit which distinctly belongs to the angel of the apocalypse, and let him collect it if he can. A little book which the CS very frequently calls by just that name, and always enclosed in quotation marks to keep its high origin exultantly in mind. A little book which explains and reconstructs and new paints and decorates the Bible, and puts a mansard roof on it and a lightning rod and all the other modern improvements. A little book which for the present affects to travel in yoke with the Bible and be friendly to it, and within half a century will hitch it in the rear, and thenceforth travel tandem, itself in the lead, in the coming great march of Christian scientism through the Protestant dominions of the planet. Perhaps I am putting the tandem arrangement too far away. Perhaps 5 years might be nearer the mark than 50. For a Viennese lady told me last night that in the Christian Science Mosque in Boston, she noticed some things which seemed to me to promise a shortening of the interval. On one side there was a display of texts from the New Testament, signed with the Savior's initials, J.C., and on the opposite side a display of texts from the little book, signed with the author's mere initials, no, signed with Mrs. Mary Baker G. Eddy's name in full. Perhaps the angel of the apocalypse likes this kind of piracy. I made this remark lightly to a Christian Scientist this morning, but he did not receive it lightly, but said it was jesting upon holy things. He said there was no piracy, for the angel did not compose the book, he only brought it, God composed it. I could have retorted that it was a case of piracy just the same, that the displayed text should be signed with the author's initials, and that to sign them with the translator's train of names was another case of jesting upon holy things. However, I did not say these things, for this scientist was a large person, and although by his own doctrine we have no substance, but are fictions and unrealities, I knew he could hit me an imaginary blow which would furnish me an imaginary pain which could last me a week. The lady said that in that mosque there were 2 pulpits. In one of them was a man with the former Bible, in the other a woman with Mrs. Eddy's apocalyptic annex. And from these books, the man and the woman were reading verse and verse about. Hungry ones thronged to hear the Bible read in connection with the textbook of Christian Science, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, by Mary Baker G. Eddy. These are our only preachers. They are the Word of God. Christian Science Journal, October 1898. Are these things picturesque? The Viennese lady told me that in a chapel of the mosque, there was a picture or image of Mrs. Eddy, and that before it burns a never extinguished light. Is that picturesque? How long do you think it will be before the Christian Scientist will be worshipping that image and praying to it? How long do you think it will be before it is claimed that Mrs. Eddy is a redeemer, a Christ, or Christ's equal? Already her army of disciples speak of her reverently as our mother. How long will it be before they place her on the steps of the throne beside the Virgin, and later a step higher? First, Mary the Virgin and Mary the Matron. Later, with a change of precedence, Mary the Matron and Mary the Virgin. Let the artist get ready with his canvas and his brushes. The new Renaissance is on its way, and there will be money in altar canvases. 1,000 times as much as the popes and their church ever spent on the old masters. For their riches were as poverty as compared with what is going to pour into the treasure chest of the Christian Scientist papacy by and by. Let us not doubt it. We will examine the financial outlook presently and see what it promises. A favorite subject of the new Old Master will be the first verse of the 12th chapter of Revelation, a verse which Mrs. Eddy says, in her annex to the scriptures, has one distinctive feature which has special reference to the present age, and to her, as is rather pointedly indicated. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, etc. The woman clothed with the sun will be a portrait of Mrs. Eddy.